I'm Leonard Fleming with the Detroit News. We're here with Mayor Kenneth Cockrel Jr., former City Council President who became mayor after Kwame Kilpatrick resigned. We're talking to Mayor Cockrel about the special election in February. You became mayor during one of the saddest chapters in Detroit history. Talk about the difficult transition from being council president to being mayor and the challenges you faced since becoming mayor.
In general, I will say it was a very challenging process just because of the fact that, as you indicated, under the circumstances under which I had to become mayor, first and foremost, I was operating under some pretty intense time constraints. Typically, what you see is in a situation where you have a new mayor that is elected, that new mayor gets 2 months to coordinate and do things with the outgoing mayor to facilitate a transition plan. In this particular case, because this transition was not the result of an election, but in fact was the result of an entirely different set of circumstances that, as far as I can tell, have been unforeseen and have never ever been dealt with in the history of city government, we had 2 weeks. So we were operating on a schedule that was only 10% of what most incoming mayors typically get. So from that standpoint alone, it was obviously very challenging.
What do you feel you have accomplished so far as mayor, and what can you take back to the voters to show them that you deserve to stay in this job and be elected in the February special election?
Tough question to ask, given that I've technically only been in office now for a little over a month. It's been like a month and a couple of days. But there are a couple of things that I can point to. First and foremost is that, as you well know, I've made some appointments that are pretty significant, and which I think go beyond just generating headlines, but also suggest that I'm very serious about this job, and I'm taking the job seriously, and then I put people in office that are really going to do the right thing by the city of Detroit and will have quality experience and share my mission of really trying to right the ship, so to speak. I hesitate to name names, but there's a couple significant names that I do need to go ahead and name. Of course, first and foremost, my Deputy Mayor Saul Green, who is playing a significant role from the standpoint of working with a couple of key departments to address some specific issues. And one of the things that I do strongly believe is that as I've made appointments to department head positions, I want those department heads to be free to do their thing.
What accomplishments do you want to have under your belt by the time the February special election comes along?
First and foremost, I've laid out a couple of broad areas that I think I want to focus on, and I want to be in a position to show tangible results in every single one of these areas. First, getting back to the issue of crime and public safety, that's a huge issue. It may very well be the paramount issue in the city of Detroit. So it's my belief that I want to be in a position to show not only that we've maximized police presence, but also hopefully that we've been able to demonstrate and show a reduction in crime in certain specific areas. I know that that's an ambitious goal, and I know that for me to even put that out there is potentially dangerous, but it's something that I want to do, because the fact of the matter is, if we don't make the city safer, and if we don't foster the perception that the city is safer, it's going to make it very difficult for us to do a lot of different things.
Now, you didn't mention the $100 million deficit that the city is facing.
Right.
Is that something that realistically you can deal with, solve in the amount of time that you have, say if you aren't successful in the February special election?
That is my goal, and that is a major focus, and that, frankly, is the top priority of the new CFO, Joe Harris. Now, based on the latest data that I've gotten from him and his assessment of where things are financially in the city of Detroit, I think that amount has been adjusted downward a bit. So I think we're probably looking, based on what he has shared with me, a deficit that is probably something on the order of more like maybe $123 to $126 million. But that doesn't change the fact, however, that that's still a huge amount of money, and that's still something that we have to deal with.
Down from 150.
Down from 150. However, bottom line is you're still talking about a big amount of money.
But you're talking pain nonetheless.
Oh, it's going to be. It's going to be. Yeah, I mean, you know.
So layoffs, possibly
Possibly some layoffs, possibly some service cuts, possibly the elimination of certain functions. I hesitate to go into specifics because, again, we're not at a point right now where we have an identified plan that we're prepared to put out there to the public. But I do think it's probably a safe assumption to say, and it's probably not bad for me to say to Detroit residents, we got some serious issues, and you better brace for a couple of things, because it's probably going to come down. That's the reality of what we're dealing with. It's not just a local reality, it's a state reality, it's a national reality, and in fact, it's a global reality. We're in a completely different place now. We have seen a major paradigm shift in terms of where our global economy is. And from a local standpoint, we have to be prepared to respond to that and to deal with it.
You have already had controversy engulf your office since you've been mayor. You could very well be tossed off the ballot here in a matter of weeks. Are you worried about being tossed off the ballot and not being mayor?
You know, at the end of the day, it's something that you cannot obsess on and that you cannot focus on. As it relates to the issues that I've had to deal with governing my campaign finance reports, once again, I'll freely admit that there are certain things that probably should have been done a little bit better. And I'm in the process now of developing a plan to move to deal with that. I will say, as it relates to this particular issue, you know, there's certain advice that I got that, including from the Wayne County Clerk's office, that now seems to have been contradicted by more recent information that's been made public. We did submit our amended and corrected campaign finance reports in a fashion that, granted, probably wasn't as timely as it should have been, but was prior to me filing nominating petitions. And I did that based on advice that suggested that if I filed those reports, that would take care of the issue and eliminate any problems with any fines that were payable. Now I'm hearing something different. As a result of that, I have gone ahead and paid all of the outstanding fines associated with the problems with my campaign finance reports. And from here on in, I think we'll have to see what develops.
Right. But you've had 3 people now file complaints with the Elections Commission and Janice Winfrey's office, Janice Winfrey's office, to have you stricken from the ballot.
Right.
And they have brought up the issue of perjury.
Right.
And how do you feel about that? I mean, that you perjured yourself by not being truthful on your affidavit.
Right. Well, again, it was my belief that by filing these amended and corrected campaign finance reports, we would be addressing the issue. Beyond that, I'm not an attorney. I have retained the services of an attorney, Mike Hodge, to look into this issue, and I would suggest that any specific questions on that be referred to Mr. Hodge. In terms of what happens from here on in, you know, I will have to see what happens. As it stands right now, I am the mayor, and I'm going to continue to act as such.
If you're stricken from the ballot and you're taken off and you can't run, will you fight it in court?
That it's a little premature to say or to respond to that. As I said, I'm consulting with legal counsel on that, and I think depending on what that advice shows, depending on how things develop over the course of the next couple of days, you know, I will move to deal with that. Right. But you know, beyond that, I would think a lot of those questions really need to be deferred to my legal counsel.
Right. What do you think your legacy will be if this comes down to either you don't win, or you're stricken from the ballot? What would you want your legacy to be as a short-term mayor?
Yeah, it's a very tough question. I think ultimately, you know, there's like I said in my swearing-in speech, I'm a geek. I'm really into like science fiction movies, but I think sometimes even in sci-fi movies, there's a lot of truth that I think we can apply to real life. And there's a line in one of the Star Trek The Next Generation movies, which is that don't try to be a great man, just be a man and let history make its own judgment. That's all I'm going to do. So I'm just going to do what I do, and I'll let history make its own judgment, and we'll see what happens as a result.
Thank you, Mayor Cockrel, for sitting down with us. I do appreciate it.
Yep, no problem.